Okay, next, in panel discussion led by Peter Reimer. If you wish to stand up for a moment while they get ready, stretch and yawn.
Okay, good. Hello, 1, 2. Ja, okay, please komt hier naar verder. Er zijn 11 personen. We gaan je opstellen, 3 dashen en we laten een mic voor iedereen nemen. Komt en maakt hier gemütlich. En we willen je wat vertellen van wat deze lied zelfs beleefd heeft. Nicht bloß, dass ihr Beker genommen sind, aber wirklich Erfahrungen, die sie gemacht haben. Und in dem Sinne wird es sehr interessant sein, von dieser Panel-Discussion hier anhören. Die sind nicht alle, was hier in Belize nu noch wohnen. Sie sind von anderen Ländern gekommen. Und da hat sich die Arbeit gemacht, die mir gemacht, hier Porte sind von dit. Und die Leute sich wirklich kriegen. Und Leute zum hier Port sind und diese Erholung. Während wir hier bitte da sind, alle top, noch sind nicht alle hier. Wir haben den Pfarrer singen, dank dem Herrn mit frohem Mut. Ist freundlich, ist gut. Wer kann den Pfarrer? Gut. Dank dem Herrn mit frohem Mut. Ist freundlich. Müdet nie, ewig, ewig werdet sie. Ja, so ich auch sagte, diese adlige Mal sich Leute Taubkrau zum Bett bekannt worden. Und jedes Mal, was wir taub kommen, dann kommt da was Frisches bei. Und so wird mit dem dritten Mal auch. Sie haben sich, was es nennen Leute, was von Thema sie wollen bringen. Da wir mit einer freien Wahl, und die wir probieren, dann mit taub zu stellen. Da wir von verschiedensten Aspekten würden was hören. Because es haben alle ähnlich eine ähnliche Schicht. Und aber viel von den Dingen habe ich was rein, wie gesagt, ich kann sehr gut mitfühlen, was das was will sich herkommen. So wir haben hier dieses Lied, ich weiß nicht, die Nummern abnehmen. Und ich habe gefragt, dass sie das würde gleich, wenn sie können, alle angeben. Nicht wie alt sie nicht sind. Aber wie jung sie wieder, wenn sie hier ankommen, ja? Dass je niet een beeld habt, meer oder weniger, wie alt wieder dieses Lied, wird sie 65 oder 3 ankommen. Door waarom? Soms zijn Leute gekommen aus den 58. Und so da hat was interessant sein zu weiter. Sind die Kinder, irgendwie Jungs, sind mehr, die 5 Jahre alt sind? Die sind vielleicht bitter bevor je ziet, dat is goed. Nou, dat nu niet is het zo dan. Maar hier is Obraham Thiesse, Frans Boykman, hier Dick, Eddie M. Remmer, Ruben Thiesse, Willy Thiesse, Peter Friesen, Arthur Penner, Tina Penner, Frieda Reimer en Neta Reimer. So de Bibel zegt in Jeremia 16, voor 16, we zullen nu de wij vrouw wat de anderen gegaan hebben, omdat we kunnen weten wat de God en de rechte weg is. En daar had ik anders een aangenaam goede gelegenheid, deze onkels en tantes een chance hebben van daar bij wat te vertellen van wat ervoor zijn geweest, eindrukken, experiences en vielleicht sogar nog een beetje Spaß. Dus ik geloof je nog een beetje Spaß hast, plus de ganz wichtigste, schwanste ervaringen. So wat immer da komen dat, ja. En dat kan zeer leicht zijn, dat werden ze hier reinmaken, dat je worden hier van verschillende ervaringen. Er zijn Wege van daar en daar, wie je some van die dingen hier, wat ze beleefd hebben. Ik wil je bloß immer verstellen, dat zijn de Wege, wat we hier hebben. History Wege, besonders over de Geschichte hier in Belize en wat van der herkomen. En vielleicht ganz kort, wat dat je was van Rusland naar Canada, Canada naar Mexico, Mexico, Belize en zo verder. En nog een ander, wat eigenlijk niks te zeggen, deze mannen en vrouwen aangeeft, als een bewoonde kolonie of een kerk of in een stad andere kan. En dit is een man wat het boek geschreven heeft van Amsterdam, uit de University van Amsterdam. Hij is een sociologist en hij heeft bezoek gemaakt in ons en dat opgetrokken. Some wieder bij openen thesis en some bij mijn mam was en vielleicht some andere. Over de tijd, dan had dit boek opgesteld om te zeggen dat we dat een kolonie nemen veranderen. Factors of dat ding wat daar bijdraagt dat men verandert van wat het eerst was. So dit is een onkel wat het geschreven heeft met somebody else top van bezit. Mir sagt, es wurde Kinder kann es gut schreiben, als wenn du selbst door een platform bent. Dat is de most accurate, ja. Mensen kunnen alles worden van die vertalen. Vielleicht ist es meeste, vielleicht ganz so, vielleicht ist es vorher gemacht, aber nonetheless, das ist, was wir sind. Hier ist das Buch, was wir gemacht haben, oder gemacht wurde, für die 50-year anniversary, then and now, basically. En werden we hier vertalen, de laatste wordt je vraag, als Piet Knelsen zien, je dicht irgendwo. Piet Knelsen is een ziemlich significant man geweest, is een traagmaker geweest. Hij heeft een früh halve traagmaker, waar de man te de früh zich mäßig wist met zijn gevoelens en de früh de zaak zo lieden. Dan heeft dus Piet Knelsen meer bijgevoerd en heeft dat door traag gezet en de früh weer waar op de been. Dat je dicht is hier bijna te vinden, op side 152. En vol irgendwo dat je dicht wil lezen, dat is Piet Knelsen in die geschichte, ähnlich in gedichtsvorm. Zoveel van dat. Waar we beten. Herr Gott, wir danken dir von da nogmaals, dass du uns geholpen hast, diese 65 Jahre. Und wir checken aus den großen Verreich, dass diese Lied hier von da in selbst zeugen. Und von Dingen vertalen, was uns wichtiger war. Und auch wel uns sind die Mitteilen von dort, unsere ganze große Show hier, was ich hier versammelt habe. Herr Gott, dir allein gebiete ihr. Und danke dir, dass du diese Lied erholen hast. Und dass noch mehr, was hier in der Versammlung wir sind, wo das Zeugen sind, dass es mächtig ist, was mit deiner Kraft und deiner Hilfe tut. Dafür danken wir dir, ich bitte, du musst diese Lied Gelegenheit geben, zu reden, wo sie von Fall sind. So, wir bitten im Namen Jesus. Amen. So, die erste Entry oder Präsentation wird von Peter Friese kommen. Heute Mike Sibiut. Is een Mike zal alle gewoon te brukken. Want je wel een stoner, stoot op. Maar brukt een Mike dat je dat gewoon duidelijk doorkomt. Maar irgendwann niet dat wil stoppen. Because als te short, we anderen dat niet hier je.
Ja, ik would give them einem Person, I guess, hope so. I hope everybody can understand and hear what I'm saying. Not that my words are that important. Yes, we moved from Mexico to Belize. There were reasons given, and I think some of the reasons were not very sound or later proved they were not very, But anyhow, I think it was the Lord's will that we moved here, and the Lord has been good. And if we would have never moved, I don't know what we would have done in Mexico. It wouldn't have worked, I don't think. So I think the whole thing was of the Lord, even though not everything was done the way maybe it would have been best. I don't know. Maybe somebody doesn't like what I'm saying, but I'm saying, yeah, we left okay, I was 18 years old when we moved, and it was 1958. We went from Los Caguayas or Chihuahuan Colony to Parita by number of vehicles traveled, and they had ordered a Chihuahuenses bus that was waiting at Parita. I don't even think the people use that road through the canyon anymore. Maybe they do. I'm under the impression they don't, but that's what we did. And I don't know what time we left. It must have been around lunchtime we left, and we traveled all day, next night, and by the following evening, we got to Mexico City. I think Mr. John D. Friesen was in Mexico City or went ahead or something, and I imagine he had hotels prepared or talked or whatever, and we stayed in Mexico City that evening, that night, and the next day and the following day, they had ordered or made a deal with Adio Bus and took us to Coatzacoalcos. I think we left fairly early in the morning and we got there late that night. I think it was one full day travel from Mexico City to Coatzacoalcos. well, in Mexico City, we larger boys, we went to Chapultepec Park or Zoo, whatever you call it, and enjoyed it there. And then we stayed in Coatzacoalcos that first night, and the next day and the following day we crossed the river. There was no bridge right in town at that time, so we all went by boat, carried our luggage to the boat and crossed by boat, and wasn't very far from the train there. We boarded the train and traveled all day, and most of the next night and early morning we got to Escarcia. The men hired 2 trucks to haul us to Chetumal, took some drinks. I don't know what all they took, but I know we ran out of water on the road. It was actually jungle, wasn't roads. Part of it was a road, but part of it was just trail through the bush, logging trails, and you could see it had been muddy, but if it would have rained in there, I don't know, we would have died in there, I think, because we were long time. There was not a person or nothing, just jungle and limbs scraped off our hats and this and that. A number of us people, boys, we sat on a truck, back end of a truck, had straight pipe, but we sat in the back and had our legs hanging down. No, we were, I don't know, 4 or 5 boys sitting there. There was a rope here, and we held on, but I remember, maybe Frank doesn't like it, but Frank Lowen, he sat there too, but he had problem falling asleep, so we had to poke him once in a while to not fall asleep, to fall off the truck, but it wouldn't have been too bad because we were driving slow anyhow, most of the way. But as was mentioned, there was some, we were very, very thirsty and stopped somewhere. Finally, we got a little more civilized, and there were maybe some people living there, and they had some sour orange trees, so we were, I think, shocked by how those oranges tasted, but I think everybody got a little bit, and that night we got to Chetumal, and we stayed there for the night. And I remember that night, seemed like the bed and everything kept on shaking and shaking because we had been shaking all day, hanging back on that truck. But anyhow, that day, I think they hired 2 trucks again and 1 car. So must have been some men went with the car along with some ladies, and they went to Chetumal ahead of us. No, from Chetumal, and we all stopped at the border, and they got to Belize City ahead of us, but we all got that evening to Belize City. At that time, of course, there was no bridge. Everything was ferry, the river across the Rio Hondo and to Belize was just a ferry, and then at Orange Walk, and there was no bridges. And then in Belize City, same thing. We got there late at night, stayed in a hotel. Next day, Emery King was around, and he helped the people with whatever needed. And they purchased food, like rice and beans and maybe flour and I don't know what all. And maybe a few axes and hammers because we didn't have anything along. And of course then, after the second night, early in the morning, we left and came to Spanish Lookout. Of course, Emery King was riding right there back with some of us other fellas. And we got to the river, and as was said, Abe Lowen walked across the river. So he claimed he was the first one in Spanish Lookout. Of course, the delegation had been here before. So then we were unloaded trucks in this side, and of course, next day or 2, they went to Norris and bought some lumber, and we started building another 1 or 2 houses because we knew that in a week's time or so more people would come. I don't know exactly how far it was done, but all the lumber that was crossed by a little dory, and then on this side we carried that on our backs up the hill there, and that's where we built the houses with a few hammers and whatever we had until maybe, I don't know how much later the trucks came, but that's what happened. Then after a couple of days, I guess my sister had been working real hard, washing and a scrub boarding, and a couple of ladies had went ahead, and she hurried after them. And I imagine she got too hot, was too hot or what, because she could swim, and the water wasn't that extremely deep or she drowned, but she drowned, and that's what happened. As it was said already, that there was no minister here or nothing, so, but she was buried there close to the river, and later, some years later, we moved part was what dug up and moved the remains, what we could, into the church here. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much for sharing. What a sad day that must have been to lose your dear sister. So, yeah, that's part of the trip that you made, which was not easy. It had its own problems, it had its own complications, but you survived and you were able to bring all the merchandise, all the stuff safely to Belize. Amazing. 18-year-old. Think of that. Brand completely different roads and places, countries and borders and what have you, to be able to do it so successfully. All right, next we have Willie Thiessen. He is going to talk about some of the difficulties of building roads in Spanish Lookout and some of the things that relate to that. Your time.
Ja, ik zie Willie Thiessen. Ik weer 23 jaar oud was herkomen. De jongens wie deden een strip ophaken van wat Saasrood breed wat nu meer rood als van Assoegleek ons bij Dokra, nee, bij Rozenhof en Rozenhoed, bij daar even de strip ophaken. Kijk wel, we stoot al je schoft ha. De eerste na had ik niet gezegd, en wie we bij de zaalmil weer een dak met een vloer boven, dat we daar slijpen, weer blijven, en verschillende jongens slijpen al. Dan s'morgens dan weer een vanjetje luid, en blijven, hij wist niet waar wie, en wie anderen ook niet in. Dan ga je checken, en we hebben niet gewaand, maar we worden aan weer plus een pak, wat een ijsatje te schrijven gewoon. Dat hebben we niet gewaand. Maar dan deden we, een paar dagen hebben we gezocht, een aanvang. Ik heb veel bij zomer geschaft. En dan deden we met die tijd, ik bleef aan een sasie, dan hadden we die voor kaart, en deden we ontvangen. Wij op de schroeven. Met die voor kaart scheefstaal, en dat wil niet gezegd, en deden we die toe ver hokken. En dan deden we grove smak en dan deden we opschoven. Dan deden we jongens vangen, plus met een schavel oploren, deden we wij met schavel, deden we gravel vieren. Hebben meerdere dagen dat stadje viert. En ik leef aan een sasie, dan hebben we die voor kat. Dan hebben we met een rijtje buiten, dan deden we met trailers de onja voor en met die voor kat oploren. En deden we stadje wij vieren.
Dat is een vrouw. Wem denkt dat nou dat zo'n dingen zoals je gebruikt worden om gravel uploaden? Wil je helpen hebben? Wow. Go ahead. Doe weer dat, joh.
Ja, en dan deden we vieren en dan weer. Maar die kwam bij een plaat wat bij nu police station is, onje bij Hillside Welding. Daar weer meestal daar te komen. Daar weer plezier madig in. We hebben een 3 uur lang na en dan deden de boel uit de pieknis weer leren aan. Waar ik kom met hij deed op een eigenlijk de arm heen de boel omdraaien. En dan hadden we je 2 dagen of wat, en dan kwamen we daar en dan kwam er iemand voorsteur voorbij en zei, de kolonie weer telt alle. Wat wil we? De kolonie kon niet meer betalen. Pieknis kwam waar hij zat en weer zei betriept. En we deden dan weer vieren. En dan deden we, maar tijd kwam. They waren aan een post in je viert, en eenmaal kwam John Remmer voorbij. En dan meende hij, had zo uitgedrenkt, de fouten hadden met een boot moest hij maar vieren, en dan weer bij deze steen bleef immer sterken. En hij lovde dan staat dat nu deze steden nu die dwam graveldampen hij. Dan we waren moedig dan die waren weer vieren. En ik heb een paar ook niet gevierd. En dan wordt bekend je mag weer wel een zand vieren. Dan wordt weer meer wat een zand willen vieren. En dan nog de kolonie samen deze voorstellen. Dan hebben we een stukje stadje viert. We hebben meerdere dagen gravel gevierd ook nog. Ja. That's it.
Ja, kon je vielleicht eens zeggen, wat van ziel, wat van budget had je dan tot die tijd? Hoeveel kun je spenden in een jaar?
Die tijd weet ik niet zo weit waar ik weet, als ik een waar kom, dan weer lijkt weer 300.000 nog wat. Dat we aan 92 lijkt dat we waar ik kom, meteen hebben 300.000 nog wat. En aan 2000 dan hadden we 700.000 dan.
Dus ik weet het zo hier van $60.000. Ik weet niet wanneer jaar het was.
Wat zijn er was dan weer. Jozef Friese als Fermi was er stoot.
Goed, zodat we niet alles te beloven, dan wil ik u zeggen, ik zei niet bij Shallow, maar ik zeg te vrij wat de voorstanders aan deden, dat die waren ongestelden. Ja, wem denkt er nog dat die heeft zijn voeders dat je viert, zijn bolen? Oké. Bang je trek naar de tijd? Wat andere moet vinger, ja? Oké, we hebben even naar de nächste, en dat is een thema even de challenges wat erbij komen van een country change. Dat is de Engelse titel. En de Frans spreekman. Wel de van Rieden.
Hey. Does it work?
Switch.
Yeah, this works. Okay, good afternoon. It's so amazing to see so many of my friends here at this time. And I am Frank, as Peter already said before, and my topic is country change. So it can be very challenging with all the changes that take place, and it can be very interesting. But I, at age of 19, was looking for more adventure, and we got a lot of it on the trip, and also when we came here. First of all, my parents were taking care of Grandma, C.K. Friesen, and she was paralyzed and in bed. But when we came here, they decided to take her along. But how? They took her to Chihuahua and put her on a train that went to Mexico City. This train went through a lot of mountains. You could say high mountains. How could a train pass there? Well, it had to make a lot of curves, sharp curves. We could see down in the valley where cars, the railroad cars, lying down in the valley, looking like they had not made the curves and rolled down. So that made it a bit shivering, but we came to Mexico City, and from there, we took her to the airport, because at that time, the road transportation was very difficult from Mexico City to Chetumal. So that was the first plane ride that everybody in the group had, I guess. And my little brother, he said he's not going into the air. He's afraid. he will not go. But he had no choice. He had to go. But when the plane it was a huge two-motor plane with propeller, and when that plane moved over to the airstrip, he looked out of the window and he saw it was going underground. Well, then he relaxed and he was happy. So later, he got a little shocked when he saw it was in the air, but then he relaxed again. So we came to Chetumal with several stops in between, and grandmother was taken with a taxi to the river, but only to the river, not farther. And with some others went with her. My brother Jacob came to pick us up at Chetumal with one of the freight trucks that he had been helping to bring down here before. So then we went with a truck in the back of the box, and we came to the river, and somehow we got across. And then we were in Spanish Lookout. That was our destination. And here we were with no cars, no electricity, and no telephone and WhatsApp. And water was only to be found in the river. So if we wanted water, we would go to the river and get some water. And so that was one of the adventures that I had been looking forward to. So they were continuing to come. So I was enjoying the situation while the older ones had the responsibility and had to look forward. Then 3 years later, a hurricane came in at night, unexpected. We had no communication with the hurricane business, so we hadn't heard of it before. So it was like a surprise, and like an adventure. So then the people in Mexico, our people in Mexico, they had heard that there was a hurricane coming to Belize, to British Honduras at that time. And they heard it was coming, but after the hurricane, they did not get the news what had happened, because the communication system in the country had been damaged, and the news just got around quite a bit later. The people in Mexico, they were getting worried. They were anxious to hear. And they had already planned, as the communication started to operate, they heard that we had survived the hurricane, but they had already done some planning to pick us all up from here and take us back to Mexico, because even though they heard that we had survived, they had the impression that we would not make it with all that damage that the hurricane had done, so they were ready to come and pick us up. And apparently, we haven't agreed on that. At least today, we still know that we survived in that hurricane. And when I think of 3 words from many other words to describe the success of the operation we had here going forward, that would be hard work and unity and the trust in God.
Very well said. Hurricane, unity, I'm sorry, what was the first one? Hard work, unity, and trust in God. Let me just see, how many of you still remember that actual happening of the hurricane? Would you want to stand, please? Let's have a look at the people that survived Hurricane Hattie in real life, not just looking at all these images over the media. Thank you very much. You can relate to what Uncle Frank just said. Thank you. With this, we go over to a next topic by Uncle Eddie Reimer, and he has some insights about what it was back then, to the need for cooperation and also supporting one another and the unity aspect. So time is yours.
Oké, ja, ik zie Eddie Remmer. En wanneer ze me Edward nadoen, dan doe ik ook mijn ophoor. Je weet niet hoe ik wil. Zo, ik wil 16 jaar als we herkomen in Belize. En ik weet wat ik meer aan denken. Ik had mixed feelings. Ik weet zo dat we voeren, maar ik deed me beyond daar nog dat te vrij. Ja, ik kom met mijn familie, met mijn ouderen, je zuster op. Her dat we in een tweede groep, we ongeveer 10 dagen later, als we hier aankwamen, als de eerste groep deed. Dus ik het te houden had. En ik zie verschillende zitten, heb ik ook observed wat je vergående deed, wat overaan deed. En vandaar kan ik al verschillende zijn wat ik daar nog niet kan. Even wat ik wil zeggen, wat een half bewoord voor dat het alle toen uitging, wie dat we toepstonden deden. Onze vervoeren, de ouderen, die stonden top en verschillende wegen wat ze deden. En ik zei dat vandaag dat moet zijn een instelling was, een attitude van toepstonden, wat het teweeg gebracht heeft. En ik vraag me dat vandaag nog zoveel daarvan aan ons haar. Als ze haar. Dat, want het gaat niet meer zo beneden zijn te armen als ze dan willen. Maar het is immer een goede practice. En dan in verschillende wegen hoe dat je practice wordt, weer een top bashaken, striepenhaak, hoe wil je zelf van de reden deed. De meridian wordt dan opgehaakt, dat is zeer interessant. We deden ook washaken voor andere leden, wordt bekend gegeven, hoe we willen maar in de zin namiddag door alle twee washaken. Dat is zeer interessant, want 20 hadden meer weniger washaken serveren en we moeten zien wat voor grote vlek we het doorgehakt kregen. En die gingen voorop, deden daar strak haken en die wat bij hem doorhaken deden met de ax, die deden weer treeg, dat hij bij hem niet nog, men we de verste op een kop vallen en dan was zo vertoop. En dan kun op andere steden, in andere inzichten, top buur, topstutsen, dan buur, een huisbuur, wat allemaal dan weer. Of even een huis sharen met anderen. Toen wat niet zo hastig wat rijden hadden dan. En daar weer zijn stad ook met aan. Maar dat we zo genoeg dat niet alle mensen dat vertrouwen hadden dat we de schaffen en die willen zeggen, vielleicht de laatste uit die voor de terug pakte op en voor de terug eer ze ganz bankrot werden, eer ze het laatste dollar ook daar hadden. Wel ze weer eentje die willen gewoon gekund terug voor weer dat we geld hebben dus alle die willen al niet gekund terug voor dat willen. Zo dat we zien wat er nog terug voor kunnen, die deden. Ik meen niet alle. Maar en de andere die verzachten zijn, al wordt je zeggen, hem gaat vertrouwen weer te schaffen. Dat wordt nog schaffen. Ja, en eind wat er gedaan wordt, had je dit opstonen, vielleicht 2 oder 3 en maar ja, zum einen kleiner Ferguson Tractor tjeipen en dan deden ze den Brücke. Ze afschussen dem Brücke en dan worden ze den weg fertig. En even de früheste deden den Brücke zum waschen en dan moesten de frühest wasdo trashstalen doen was dat ze dat alle fertig worden met hem 35 Massey Ferguson. Nog een wordt gedaan wordt, er wordt mij een meeting gemaakt. En dan hadden ze daar bereid te worden mal groups maken. Vielleicht met een welhabender, met die andere, met een paar andere, wat de nächste welhabend werden, wat helpen nedig werden, helpbedürftig. En dan de hoop stonen en zich in een ander moeten spreken, advies geven. En vielleicht wahrscheinlich die Wohlhabende vielleicht noch mal wat je had om uitleren, vielleicht. Und vielleicht weinig, hoop niet wat zijn wird dat ze wat we terugkrijgen, aber dem ähnlich has wat zei dertje, dertje slagen en zijn wiedergekommen. Eenmaal een gelegenheid wie ik een Belize voeren, oder ik vielleicht met je voeren, ik weet al niet, krijg, aber dan zag ik daar wie een man van Mexico hier aangekomen, ik leef van een thema geënt, en waarschijnlijk met een welhabender man, en die trafte met hem, die bent bij die taub, en dan weer zijn een beetje nieuwsgierig, wat dat schaft, en wat gedaan wordt, hier een aanvang gemaakt, en hoeveel dat brokken deed, hoeveel het kosten wordt, een aanvang maken. En dan zit hem te bent bij die een beetje uit veel, maar dat brukt dus alles. Alles wat hij had, dat brukt het. Ja, ik geloof dat is een poort, wat ik vandaag als een zeer wecher sleutel wordt namen wat er weer voor succes dat opstonen en vertrouwen een ten andere en caring attitude. Wees vanaf vrouw daar niet alle toepas bank kapot gegaan dat Spanisch ook nog eens stonen gebleven. Nu zitten daar wat niet alleen, we worden nog weer kennen. En waar we dat zijn, weer te, dat wat we je oren hebben van onze ouderen, dat opstonden dat wel weer practicen. Dat kan nog weer bestaan blijven. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Vol van item dat is, ja. Dat van toopschaffen, ja, je zijn een perfect example dat het schaffen dat. Voor alle van wat hier zijn, dat zijn dat schaft, wanneer we wel zijn, taub te zetten, uit te tussen, en zich dat te helpen, en met hier we de law is, en daar zijn dingen wat dan gaan te doen. Dat is evident in deze groep, het is evident dat dat heeft gebruikt. Omdat we alle taub te zijn vandaar waar we zijn. So thank you very much. nächste wat we krijgen, nou een van de jongens konden, je reden van een bien beidig, je dik is het nächste. En hij wil wat vertalen over de methode, wat ze gebruikt had om vormen, method, or basic methods and challenges of farming, and even marketing produce. Tell us your story.
Okay, I am George Dick. I was 9 years old when we reached Belize. And I want to make some points about crops and harvesting and try to make it as short and as interesting as I can. A little bit about what we saw when we came here. As that famous trip everybody talk about through the bush and from Scarcia to Chetumal was a very, sometimes the truck would even stop to shoot turkeys and different things, and then we go again. So that was quite an interesting thing for a 9-year-old boy to see. Then we reached the border sometime at night, and there was one street that had lights in Chetumal. And they discharged us there from the truck, and that's where we waited. I can't remember if we took a hotel or we waited for the next morning, but anyway, the next morning we crossed the river, the border river, and it had a ferry. And across the river there was a small house with the officer in there. And the interesting thing was that he didn't ask us for our names or nothing. He just counted us and wrote it down in a book. And then we were ready to go. So when we get to Spanish Lookout, we saw 3 acres of clear land, more or less, and a sawmill, and a big house, a big old house upstairs under the famous tamarind tree, where everybody got to hear about. And the 18,000 acre property we had bought from Mrs. Olga Burns, which later some people said we Native people thought we got the land from the government, but that was misinformation. We bought this land from an owner. So anyway, it was all jungle. We had to make roads and clear the jungles. And I remember the first acre that was cleared by a bulldozer. There were close to where Coop Tinsmith used to be. There, the Danny Coop is now. So that's where the first acre was cleared. And the biggest concern was for everybody what we will make a living with here in Belize. It took about 2 weeks till my dad bought a cow that we could milk. And we really enjoyed the fresh milk because this powdered milk and condensed milk we were not used to, and we didn't like it. So it was a valued thing, and we had to go cut grass by the riverside to feed the cow. So then the first and then the Hurricane Hattie brought so much rain that the river raised up to top gallon, they call it, when it's over. Really biggest flood ever seen. And we saw houses floating on the river, in the middle of the river, and live cattle. And that was in '61, so the hurricane brought in a lot of foreign exchange, was donated to Belize, and that opened the markets for lumber, hardwoods, and farm supplies, farm produce, such as vegetables, chicken, eggs, and red kidney beans and cheese. The first 2 acres of red kidney beans were planted by a machine in Spanish Coast. Was a 2-row planter we had hired from Eduardo Juan, Morningstar Farm. It was brought in by a motorboat by the river. We had no weed control, and the beans grew 6 feet under weeds, very difficult to harvest. Dad and I walked one day to Central Farm to ask for information to raise produce in Belize. Coconut and cacao was suggested. Our colony leader, Peter F. Friesen, said, RK beans will never be raised in this country by us. That was his estimate at that time. And then the corn production started off pretty strong. We had, after 4 to 5 years, Mr. Peter Friesen imported some hybrid seed corn from Nicaragua, the Poi T66, which I remember clear, which doubled our yields of corn from 10 to 20 bags per acre. The price was then between 3 and 6 cents a pound for the produce. I'll talk a little bit about the produce. Tomatoes and other vegetables was one of the first income. After a few years, corn, red kidney beans, and chicken were our major income. Then the harvesting. In 1968, 2 brothers and I built a corn sheller from wood and iron, old iron, powered by a tractor. It was able to shell 300 bags of corn, clean corn, in 9 hours with about 3 gallons of sweat. The corn ears were picked by hand and hauled into by a tractor and trailer, and sometimes in muddy roads, into the corn house. When dry, it was shoveled by hand into the corn sheller. The machine that was built lasted for 6 years and shelled 75% of all the corn from 68 to 73. Then I purchased an old 33 Massey combine from John Friesen to shell corn, RK beans, and harvest milo straight in the field. River crossing with loads was a constant problem, especially when floods came. Prime Minister George Price came in our yard one day by the river with his Land Rover and said, I am looking for the best place to put the Baking Pot Ferry, which is still in that location in operation. The old Barton Remy ferry that Nord had was about to give out and too old to be used. God bless Spanish Lookout.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Give an applause. About the beans, right? Rice and beans and chicken is a very common commodity, food that's being eaten by most Belizeans. So it's amazing that RK beans were introduced and such a successful crop. So we're going to shift a little bit. Would you stand for just a little break? We're going to listen to the stories of these women, and I hope, just stand up. For those of you who are sitting and tired, we can concentrate a little better when it's, we get a little exercise. So next we will hear like a lady that knows a lot about medicine, and what the reasons were that people back then weren't quite as sick as we are today, 65 years later. So we will listen to Mrs. Nada Reimer, Class B Reimer. You may be seated. Let's pay our attention to her.
Oh, Shelford, yeah.
By then, I was bien Pedikinita. I was 13 years old when we came here in the third group of 31 persons. 3 weeks later than the first ones came. The question is sometimes asked, what did you eat here in the beginning? Well, when we reached Chetumal after a very rough trip to the jungle, we met Mr. Peter D. Reimer, and he said, buy your own food. There is no one to feed you when you come to Spanish Lookout. So my dad bought about 50 white breads and a gallon of Tate and Lyle golden syrup, and that was our food. We were totally relaxed when we came here. We had food along. And there were two things we never had in Mexico. We reached by the river in the middle of the night, so we unloaded the bus and let it go back, and we lay down on the grass and tried to sleep till morning. It was Easter Sunday, so for 2 days we eat mainly white bread and syrup. We like it. The water we got from the river. Later, a doctor came and told us to boil all drinking water. But the first few weeks, we just drink it as it is. He recommended we should all take vaccines for typhoid fever. After the vaccine, two of Mr. Martin Panner's children got sick. After screaming one whole night, and the sad daddy took his two children on the wheelbarrow past our house and went through the river. And there they carried him with the dory over the river. And the other side of the river, there was a tractor and trailer, and they were taken to Cayo to the hospital, where they stayed a long time. And we all went through a climate change that made a long line by the two toilets that we had here. But most of us stayed healthy, or it improved here in Belize. Daily bathing in the river was very good for all the sores we had from insect bites. For the man who worked in the bush, the ticks the Hulstjebak was a big plague for many years. Before they went to sleep, after a good swim in the river, there was a flashlight and spekapula. That was a must for the wives. And my former husband, Klaus Reimer, he was then 16 years old. He got malaria. He was nailing roof for his parents' house, and in the hot sun, and he was shivering on the roof, and he had to stop working, and they take him to Cayo on a big truck. In the back of the truck, they laid him, and Mrs. Van Thiessen went along as a nurse. And the babies were born in their homes free. The pregnant mothers had no doctor visits before the babies were born. Later years, when our children were born, it cost us $3 to $5 to have a baby. No mother died, no baby died by birth. The babies were here stronger and healthier than in Mexico. They started to walk from 1 year. Here in Mexico, they started to walk from 1 year, here from 10 months. My mom always said this is the best country for children, for babies. We had no colds, no flus, no schnatternase, no measles, no chicken pox. The first year, only one person died, and the second year, some babies died from lung infection. Mrs. Klaas C. Panner and Mrs. Van Thiessen were midwives. They gave a lot of their time for others. Mrs. Thiessen, a young mother raising her own family, often was there for others for first aid, as a first aid nurse. And I want to talk a little bit more about the food. When we came to Chatham Mall, one father bought a big papaya and cut it and laid it there before us on the table, and he said, "So this is the fruit you will eat from now on." And whooey, the taste and the smell, that made nobody happy. And when we came here, we find some little sweet mangoes, but when we bite in there, it was all just hairy, a mouthful of hair. So that was not very appetizing either. And there was the tamarind tree. We called it zure schoute. That was too sour to eat, but some who like sour, they eat it. But we find some green hog plums, and my mom cooked nice red jam from it. A lot of people use the green hog plums for jam. A big problem was that we had with the flour. It always came with worms and bugs. We could buy no flour without worms. So Mr. Coop was a tinsmith. He soon started to build the flour sieves. I guess he sold a lot of that. Then later we had a problem that the bread got sour and sticky. Sunday for fast, when we cut the bread, we saw the knife became sticky, so we knew the bread was sour again, so we had to toast all the bread. And if it once was in your house, it stayed there. You had that it was just in the house, you had it in the house. And then we start to use vinegar in the dough, and that helped. Potatoes were too expensive to eat, so we tried different things like sweet potatoes, cassava, cokes, a kind of root, plantain, even the green on top of the cabbage tree. And some months ago, we chopped a palm tree with the cabbage tree, and I said to the worker, "I want the green." And he didn't know what they want with it. And he had to bring me the greens from the top, and I cooked soup and gave him from that soup. And he said he had never tasted such good soup before. So there's still something to cook good soup. The main meal was red kidney beans with noodles or kilte. No noodle machine. We could raise our own chicken or cattle, and then we could have fresh meat. But many people didn't eat meat at all. They were too poor. Later, D.D. Thiessen started to butcher meat every other week. He came on our yard, and we could buy some fresh meat. And we tried to be thankful for what we had, and murmuring was not encouraged. And all of us, I guess, we still have that with us. We don't grumble about the weather. We have learned to take it as it is, because we thought it was God's will that we moved here, and that's what our parents teach us. We have to be happy with what we have.
Very well. Thank you so much. Some of the challenges: no ambulances, no first aid, just whatever was available. It's amazing how times have changed. Next is my mom, Frida Reimer. She's going to touch a little bit on the fact that she was in Mexico when her dad was here, and something happened in Mexico that was really frightening. But actually, she wants to talk about what it's like to do laundry in the first couple months or something. So, time is yours, Mom.
Yes, I'm Frida Reimer, and I was And I was 14 when I was in Belize. And in 1957, my dad went to British Honduras with some other men together, like a delegate. And then that happened, that was in August, and it was kind of sehr viel Avara. En dan weer het krijgt ze het ene zin op en aan, we hebben mensen rijdt hem slopen gaan en dan slucht het bij ons aan. En wat nu, we zijn wacht, we alle dista, maar onze daar weer op de pap van de stokke drak. En mijn oudste zag er aan rit, en die schwinde pick-up aan switchen en houden we weg. En we aan de alle rit, zoveel als daar daar kunnen. En we weer er 8 ver op kab. En dan voeren we nog een beetje naar de lobers, maar dat is no lood tijd. Dan voeren we aan de his. Dat weer een beetje een schraak. Maar als papa dan his kwam, dan vertelde hij wat hij al beleefd had. En wilde vielleicht naar British Honduras trekken. En dat duurde ook niet zo lang, wordt red gemaakt op Idrop. En duizend gebeurd, aangepakt. En Idrop staag kwam. En we voor de meest voetsen om Idrop weg. De zaken weer afgelood. En dan voeren we bij Chihuahua. En dan zaten we op bezoek op. Met Mexico City. En dat werd het zondag, dan heel wie stijl. En normaal kunnen we dan om zoo en het dierenpark voor met de street qua. Dat weer dan. Zo wat we dan iemands eigen zijn hadden. Dan op een oond moesten we het trekken in hotel. En maandag waren we weer. En dat werd dan al niet meer zo interessant, dat reizen. Er werden al tjingen krank en een bijzonder zei krank. Dat ze dachten dat die would hingen wij sterven. En dat werd snel bij de Remmers Bernie. Ik bleef de heetste stad. En dan hebben we weer wat de waar we dan jungle naar doen. En we hadden 2 trucks aangenomen. En dat we plus plot, we kunnen zaten naar Spaan, we kunnen best heen naar hem. Op een truck afgeload, ik bleef een beetje vrij. Niet krijg zo, maar Ammerhans, we werden nog een beetje de dag en een zakje met wat zaken die kunnen daarboven zetten. Maar we voerden de ganze nacht even. En dat we zo zeer lang, we wisten niet of we weer op een rechterweg waren. Maar eenmaal dan vingen we door een suitcase. Weer dat van dat andere fotograaf gevallen, en dat we noemen bij. En dan wisten we dat weer ver ons. En we kwamen die s'morgens en zaten maal aan. En dat we alle nebelig en bakerig waren. Ik weet, er wordt dan paperwork gedaan, en voeren we even ferry. En dan wat police, en dan weer we dat ten. En dan per middag wordt aangekomen en dan dicht en middag voeren we dan naar Spanish Lookout. Ook waren met een oude bas, had blind spray daarboven te zetten. De venster klopte alle. Maar Mr. Emery King zat op de verste zet. En spazierbij kon je niet verstaan. Hij reed Engels en we kunnen niet Engels. En dan kwamen we dan mee met z'n dat we een orange geworden. En dan weer, dat zag je al zeer smaak. En dan we nog niet ganz bij de river. Maar dan kwamen we bij de river en dan meende dat op de doorheen op. Dat we een smalle doorheen en dat we een donkere man. En die kon plus 3 mensen op eenmaal even vieren. Maar we kwamen wij anders. We moesten dan op en we hielden ons vast. En gruwelde ons. En dat gruwelde duurde maar niet lang. Am duurde het niet zo lang, einde voor even vieren. Dan werd het ook zo dat we waren een smalle weg waar we kunnen gaan. En dat we een beetje zo, want we dem wilden nog gaan, dan wilden we bij dat grote huis komen waar we wilden van aanvang naar bij wonen. En we hadden de tijd al, we wilden al jaren aan onze kassen zijn. En onkels weer rijden, maar door we een missing, dat we een beetje disappointed waren, moesten dat accepten. Ik dacht, mijn kassen weer verdronken. En dan werd het nacht. En door die licht, ze gingen altijd slopen. Waar bis de dag heb je gesproken en leden mensen zich daardoor hoe ze dan ruim hadden. En dan werd het plus in een dag naar ruim. En dan ging ik mijn 2 zusters slepen daar nog in de dag. En 's morgens tidig op, dan gingen we weer al tidig op, bleef ik hongerig en we voets wat te doen. En moesten we dan naar de river gaan met mijn mama water holen. Mijn mama zei, nee, dat water zal 20 minuten koken, we willen drinken. En we geen fridge, water wordt niemand niet koud. En we darsten zei, maar dat heeft alle geschaft. En de mannen deden Hisabue. So je niet zo kunnen, geloof ik. Manchmal wir dan nicht moderne fair, dann mögen wir das Lied auch an. Vielleicht 2 paar oder so, dass es mal mehr rumgeht. Und weil es ist mir immer da alle Mess alle in his Horde, dann die nicht lang kämen sie nur ans Frau, Mama Frau, eigentlich wird wir alle verehrt Borsche. Und Mama wie bald so ja, sie würde sich auch weiter. Und habe ich dann mit 5 Bazars da de Werk einmal mit einer Steckmaschine gewaschen. Wenn je nicht weiter war, eine Steckmaschine ist, dann hat je die ältere Tantes Frau. Und dann, dat wir waschen, dann habe ich einmal gedacht, dass ich noch vielleicht noch einen Kuchen kriege oder eine Kuchen oder ein Eiscreme. Ich schaffte was mehr. Und wenn wir gleich 3 fertig hatten, dann können wir hinkommen. Dann sagt die Tante bis nach Dankeschön. Und dann, wenn ich dann ist wieder, dann nummer mir alles. Ich will gehen de Boden, dort wird dann gerade treat. Der Feit wieder, der Bein wird dann so ein bisschen angeschwollen von all die Eiersaffer, Sandfleisch, Butlers, Halsgebäck. Und ein bisschen Schlamms. Und dann, wenn wir dann mit rüber gingen, wir sehr maglich, aber dann wird die kleine Festjes reiten uns bieten. Aber Boden ging sehr schein, aber nicht immer. Wir haben ein paar Mal sind belebt, dass wir mussten seine ein paar Mal als wir am Strom gekommen und dann wollten wir den zurückkriegen. Die werden nicht gelegt, das wir 2 Mal. Aber die werden fast schwarm können, muss dann erst und dann wir uns so nicht jeden machen, alle Tupfoten. Und so, dann gingen wir immer wieder nach, dass wir das catchen können. Und wir haben das Bett zurückkriegen. Und so hat es Dinge dann ein bisschen nicht, aber Gott sei Dank, die leben nicht nach. Und ich glaube, es wird niemand zwar so eine große Wandel geben, ich hoffe, es wird nicht. Und wenn sie nach mir würde sind die Pläne, dann würde sie statt, ja, das ist nicht. Ja, und ich bin in der Gruppe, wo 12 Familien bei wir.
Sehr interessant. En Dankeschön. En verder war ich zum dem Mosselsabbü, ja? Stück Maschine, das war. Wem chant dort? Wer hat dort alle Dona? Wow, auch nach einer Gauns ahead. Let's turn the clock, right? Wat dat trekt door aan. Dat is een idee, wat voor Brückenchannel, waar het niet meer wordt, electricity afkomt, de wasmachine niet meer bij de schaaf, dan trekt er een stukmachine. Sehr dankzij. Amazing stuff, wat we hier. Zunächst is mijn schwiegermama, en die wil wat vertellen van dat interessante, dat oninteressante, te kleider te komen. Unity.
Yes, I am Tina Penner. I was 16 years old when my family moved to British Honduras. We were a family of 12, eager to experience life in a completely new country with lots of new things to learn. We had learned from our dad to keep on the sunny side of life and be content even if we did not have everything we needed or wanted. Clothing was one thing. One of our group men mentioned that we would likely all have brought enough material for clothing for 5 years, but that was not the case with most of us. The Purina Feed Company helped us out with that. They filled their feed into print bags which came in different patterns, flowers, striped, etc. Very nice for sewing our dresses and shirts. But we also had brand bags that were softer material, which served nicely for diapers. But we still needed something for the hard-working men's pants. That was solved by washing flour bags, rubbing out the printed words, and then dyeing them with dark colors. They were comfortable and suitable for the hot weather. Then came Hurricane Hattie and flooded Coyote Town. There was lots of water damage, and the cloth store had piles of soaked material for sale. So several of us girls decided to go and buy. We decided to go and buy some. We crossed the river by dory and walked to the highway, hitchhiked and got our cloth. Later, a clothing factory opened and they got lots of scraps which we could pick up free, so that was our source for making blankets. We made lots of quilts, which we love to share with the poor people around us. God has taken such good care of us through all the difficulties. To him be the honor.
Thank you. All about finding material to make some clothes and whatnot. Somebody had said it was the best, what was the best pants to wear? Comfy, comfortable. What about the jeans nowadays? Or Wranglers? Basic stuff. Think of that. All right, our next item is by Abram Thiessen, and he wants to talk about something about that has impressed you as a very early age, around 5 or 7, the jungles of British Honduras.
My name is Abram Thiessen. I arrived with my parents and 3 sisters at Spanish Lookout about 2 months after the first ones came, when I was only 5. And so I had, at 5, I didn't have much things to worry about. It was for the parents and grandparents more than for me. So what I'm telling is just more like what children would experience or remember. We arrived at the river at nighttime. We were crossed over by a canoe in the dark. For the first several nights, 2 or 3 families shared one house until another house was erected. One morning, the ladies needed water for laundry, so I was given a 1-gallon bucket to join Klaus Arpana, who was a couple years older than me, to carry water from the river. And that was not only once to go, it was several times until there was enough water. While still in Mexico, I had imagined that in Belize, we children would climb the banana tree from branch to branch and eat the delicious bananas as much as we liked. It wasn't long until I learned it differently. When the first flood threatened our safety, that was the yard close to the river, close to Mennonite Beach. It was just maybe a threat, or we thought it might happen. Then Mr. Peter F. Friesen came by in the evening with his tractor and trailer to gather women and children to take them to people who had already moved up to their permanent place. We all covered ourselves with plastics to try staying dry. It was a rainy night. At my grandparents', it took a while till I could sleep. The unending, unpleasant sound of frogs kept bothering me. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought maybe a bigger animal or something that could never stop making this noise, so I was worried and couldn't sleep for a while. When I was 6 years of age, our house was moved over to our property. That property would be where Isaac Weave has his muffler shop, just maybe 200 yards further west from there. Our house was dragged with a D6 cat. Our mom, with the 4 children, we were riding along inside the house. Mom would sit on a solid wood chair close to a window to watch everything. And I think we children, we just were excited whatever happened. Dad would walk ahead with an axe to remove obstacles for the house to pass. When the move came to a soft place, the floor of the house was pushed up from the mud, and floorboards broke loose so that our canned food started falling out. And our dad had to run back and see if he could gather all the glasses of canned food that were fallen out in the mud. Soon after we had settled on our land, my dad walked through the bushes to see what he would find, or how many trees he would find that were good for lumber. He found a huge sapodilla tree, about 4 feet thick. Dad wanted to make a fence post of it. My uncle helped Dad to cut the tree with a crosscut saw. That saw is like about 6 feet long, and it has a handle on each end, and the man cutting with it, they pull, and the next one pulls, and then it moves back and forth. And that way they can cut a tree. But this tree was very huge. It was a whole day or more than a whole day task to get it cut. Before the tree fell, the saw was jammed, so that they had to leave it they had to just leave it and go and walk home. While we were at the supper table, the tree crashed down. It gave a loud sound as its branches crushed other trees down too. Later, splitting the tree into fence posts was several months' work for my dad. For those who have experienced Hurricane Hattie, it is unforgettable. I'm not going to tell much of it, but one thing I want to say about what soon after the hurricane, we had to learn to eat something that we didn't know from before. One thing was the dried split peas. I assume they were sent into the country as a hurricane relief. And there were lots of them available. Sometimes, or many times on the list from the store, there was split peas. Cooks made soup and different other meals of it, but I remember getting tired from them, having them almost every day.
Thank you. It's a story of a boy that was 5, 6, or 7 back in those years. And such a good recollection of all the many memories and the things that you've done back then. Interesting. We have another item that nobody has touched on yet. Guess what it is? Education and attending school and related items that could be woven into this topic by Ruben Thiessen.
Yeah, my name is Ruben Thiessen, and we came to British Honduras in the year 1960. I was 11 years old then. Leaving Mexico, my teacher was Brother Eddie's dad. He taught me for 2 years, and his brother Victor was my good schoolmate in my grade. Had fun with him. I went to the school here by Rose North, which is across from the town hall. And what I remember at school is rain, mud, and fun. And also screaming animals in the jungle. It was something that scared us. Narrow road, and we had to walk in the jungle, and the first year I never walked alone that distance. I was too scared to walk alone that distance there. And in the school, we learned a lot about Bible things, Bible times, and the Bible people, when they came to a place, they gave it a name. So there was a place where Irvin Thiessen lived in that area somewhere. The road was very muddy. Tractors would drive me, 2 lines were driving, and they got too deep, and their belly, the tractor would touch, and they took another line and drove again. And so we had to walk in the ditch. The top was, we couldn't walk on the top of the hills. We had to walk in the trenches. And beside was no way to walk around because everything was driven over. So we called that name Knedeb Shata. That means mud deep, knee-deep mud. That's what we called the place. Knedeb Shata was the place. And as we heard, sometimes animals, something beside the road, we could very seldom or never see. A couple times we saw maybe an ear and a tail, something, but really not much. And one day morning going to school, there was a big animal screaming very loud, and we just ran all we could to school, looked backward, and nobody followed us, so we just ran to the school. So a couple weeks later, we heard saying that it had been monkeys, so then we were relaxed. And in school, we played under the school quite often. We made a pool with water, and I put a stick through the water, and then through the part, and then here we put another hole that hit this hole, hit this hole, then we pull out a stick, the pipe full of water, and then we push it in, and the water skirt high. So we put good nozzles in there, and we pumped water. It was lots of fun. And we also ate under the school. We had a lunch break under the school usually. And if we would dump some food like milk, chocolate milk, then 3 days later, mushroom would grow in that spot. So quite often we saw mushrooms growing under the school. And one day, one student had to stay in during lunch break. So soon after that, the teacher comes out and goes to the jungle and broke off a small stick and came back, and as the teacher passed us, he said something like this should not happen. But he went in and the boy got a spanking. And another time a visitor came to the school after lunch. The teacher went out, talked with him, and the teacher came back in. And so once the school was out, the teacher told us that Jake Reimer got shot last night. So we took the message home to our parents what happened. And at school, we played different games. We played running, quite a bit of games with running, and then usually to catch me, I need 2 or 3 guys to catch me. But if Hen Vedic was in the crowd, he could outrun me. He could catch me alone. And I never could catch him, but he could catch me. And as we were playing ball, we didn't have a bat. We used a bat to play with. So we just used our hand to hit the ball. And the fingers are soft, so we put our thumb in there, so it was harder. But then if not, we put a kahuna nut in there, then it was harder like a rock. And then we hit the ball very far. But then the teacher said we shouldn't do it because we were playing with children, and they could not catch the ball then, so it flew way over, so we couldn't use that patent anymore. And one morning, it was very rainy at home. It rained and rained. It was windy. The house got wet. We had to close the cracks and everything. And the good thing was the teacher had said the day before that tomorrow would not be school. He would visit school. So we stayed home tranquilo and enjoyed it. It was windy and rainy. And later we heard saying that had been a hurricane, but we had a good time at home. So life was fun at school.
Wow, that's a very positive impression about the earlier years of attending school. Thank you so much, Ruben, for sharing that interesting aspect of attending school and all its things related to it.
Test. Other Peter asked me if you ever had news at school or they reported to school. So one day when the teacher came and went to school, he said we have a small baby boy, and his name is Ruben. And that boy still owes me a shirt. He has not given me a shirt yet.
So they must have liked your name, Ruben. Very good. All right, it makes us curious who that was. You mind telling us? Who was that father? Who was the man that said he had a name they called him Ruben? You mind telling us who it was? Yeah.
The teacher was Albert Dick.
All right. So there was some ways of sharing news, and especially during, I guess, through the school. You had that incident about Jake being shot, and babies were born, and kittens were born, I guess, and other things that were worth sharing, right? Exciting news. We have our final one. It's all about another very important aspect, It's the church aspect of our community by my father-in-law, Arthur Penner. Time is yours.
Yes, it's an important thing to speak about. When our family moved to British Honduras, I was 20 years old, but that was about 8 months after the first ones had arrived here. And as we heard about from Brother Eddie Platt about the spiritual life, is a very important part of our life, and that's what the early pioneers here thought so too. So they, one very important thing was meeting together to fellowship and to hear from God's Word. And we have heard the expression already about gathering under a, what was it again, a tree, tamarind tree. That's what the earliest pioneers did. We were not here then yet, but, and that's where the first funeral was held too, as I understand. But soon a church building was constructed. It had a thatched roof made of cahoon leaves, and the floor was river sand spread out. The sides were mostly open, but the lower part of the sides was lumber slats upside down, or endwise. And what was interesting to me especially, and I don't know how many others, that often when the service was going, there would be birds singing on the thatched roof. So while a solemn message was preached underneath the roof, there was maybe an orapendula, often it was, that was burbling its beautiful song up on the roof, on the upside and top. And the blackbirds, they were singing good cheer, while the preaching was going on. And for some of us, it was a bit distracting at times, but it was interesting. It was worthwhile to come. When one family after another moved up to the planned villages, they still had to walk back to the church services, and the muddy roads often made the walking a bit difficult. Or, well, we took the challenge and sort of enjoyed it. I remember when we, as I experienced that, we would, often it was not possible to go by tractor. If it was, then we didn't need to walk. But as we walked along, we passed one house, and those young people came to the road, and they joined us. And by the time we were getting closer to the church, there was quite a group walking. And at first, we boys or men, we tried it with rubber boots, but the mud was sticky, and the boots became heavy. I remember one middle-aged man, he once said, when those boots are in stride, then you just have to see that you can follow them. And so we finally left the boots at home and walked barefoot, rolled up the pant legs and walked barefoot. And when we arrived at the church, there would be wash basins ready that we could wash our feet and enter the building. I remember that the ministers, they used to carry shoes along and put on their shoes before they walked in, but we were comfortable with being barefoot in the church. So that first church building did a great service, while many of the settlers still lived close to the river, that place that is called Mennonite Beach today. Within a year or so, a new thatched roof church building was erected where Esso filling station is today, and a graveyard was begun there too. And the first grave, as I remember it, the first grave was for Mr. Peter F. Friesen, the colony representative at that time. But that building was blown down when Hurricane Hattie passed over. And then the church services, they were shifted to a building where the poultry were killed, a poultry killing plant, which was owned privately at that time. There was a bit, room there was a bit scarce, but it did work out. But then, meanwhile, a decision was made to erect a new church building on the land of Deacon Cornelius R. Platt. Brother Platt donated the land for that purpose. The Platt family did not move to British Honduras, but kindly supported the struggling community. The first church services held in the new building were on March 18, 1962. And a bit more than 2 months later, on May 25, the first funeral was held there, and that was for my father, Heinrich C. Penner. This building still stands today. It is called the Schöntal Meeting Hall. Many ministers have preached their first message in that building, and several have preached their last message there. A few other remarks on life back then, on those earlier years. As I see it, there was quite a bit of what we sometimes call one-on-one fellowship at that time. And there was quite a bit of visiting done on the evenings, even though it took maybe a mile or two to walk through along the muddy roads. And quite often, when we had visitors, we would spend at least some time singing songs together. And another custom, I don't know exactly how it is going on here now, but the ministerial had the custom of, I don't know how often exactly, but they would often have the line it up that they would visit every house, every home, and visit with each member of the church personally. And maybe in a couple of years, that would be repeated. So I could speak quite a bit more yet about present-day life, but I would just like to encourage us, each one of us, each one of you, let's be faithful in that what God has given us. There's nothing that comes from self-will that will remain, but that which is worked by the Holy Spirit, that will remain. So let's all strive to be overcomers. The bride of Christ is being prepared for the wedding. Let's be ready when that comes. Thank you.
And thank you, too, for sharing that aspect of church life, the importance of church, encouraging the weak ones, and visiting and sharing the Lord, I think is of utmost importance, even in our day and age. So, panel, thanks again very much for what you have done, the time you've spent, and preparations for these speeches. May God bless you. And I think we'd like to open up for a couple questions. Is there any questions that you have in regards to that would be appropriate to ask this panel? Pete has another one. Good. The mic.
Arthur said something about birds singing while he was preaching. And sometimes there was a snake up there catching a frog, and they were making noise too.
Interesting, yes. The beauty of nature, all the creation. George?
I would just like to add one thing. In 2008, I was walking along the streets in Belize City, and we passed George Price's house. And we decided to walk in and say hello, and he accepted us. And he smiled and looked at me, and he said, "Which colony do better, Spanish Gulch, Shipyard, or Blue Creek?" And he smiled while he was saying it.
He knew the answer. Because he knew the answer.
Well, I don't know if I told him right away, but I said, we're doing pretty good. I think we're a little bit ahead.
Okay, good answer. He took an interest in your doings, right? Catching up and whatnot. Interesting key figure. Uncle Dave Reimer has his hand up, please. How many seniors have died since 5 years ago? Anybody has that number? I don't. Since 5 years ago, in other words, the 60th anniversary, now we celebrate the 65th. Any idea? Approximate? I guess we don't have the exact number, Uncle Dave. Several. Maybe? I don't know. 5, could it be 10? 4? Good. And there was another one. Question.
I would just like to throw in a few words.
You need a mic, right?
Okay, yeah, George Duick and me, we're only about a month difference in age, and we were together, we lived together at the riverside there. And one day we saw our dads, George's dad and my dad. They talked about serious things, how to survive, what to do, how to make a living here in this. And we took it really serious. We listened to it, and then we both decided, we will be a part of making this possible. So we agreed we would start something what we didn't know that anybody else did. So that was, we would go and collect the kahunate nuts, and we would split them up and send them with my dad to Belize City on the market, see if that would be a money-making business. And we started it, and I know we shipped one bag with nuts with my dad to the market. I don't know if we got any money of it ever, but at least we tried something.
Thank you. You at least tried something. Those kahunates, they were pretty hard to crack and to eat both.
I wasn't asked to share anything, but I was born in 1961, and I am 61 now. I was born maybe 3 weeks after the Hurricane Hattie. But I was, Brother Arthur shared a little bit about the singing. One thing I've been missing is like when we were together as the family or visiting in the evenings and Sunday evenings, usually before they would leave, they would sing. And also when there was we would gather for somebody had died, so we would gather in the evenings probably, and there would usually be singing. I really miss the singing. I love singing, and I remember the dogs were also something's hollering. I don't know, I don't hear the dogs doing it anymore. I don't know why. They holler when there's coyotes, but when the singing is going on, I don't know. But it was always, it was a sad sound though, what the dogs did, but I really, who all remembers that? We would sing before we would leave. Yeah, well, praise the Lord. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I hope it's not dying out, but it seems like it's not as much as it used to be. But by the way, we're going to treat you to a little singing yet before we leave, okay? Is it just one more yet? If not, we're going to conclude this panel here. Would you please stand and sing a verse of... one more yet? Okay. Ben
Ja,
Petter.
ek sê 64. Ek sê een van die was wat zijn hij trakko maakt weer dan zijn jong. Mijn mama deed manchmal interessante uittrekken maken van verschiedenste dingen zijn. En mir is dat ganz so, dat ver zij starft, dat zij zei, dat had hier zo schwer gegaan, dat wanneer we den Weg zijn was van Chattermal, van Escarcia naar Chattermal, dat we zijn Weg was, dan wird China hier gebleven.
I think that resounds in some of these men's minds yet, right? You heard the same expression? Not a very welcoming, I guess, consolation. Is another one?
Ja, ik was als tien als we hertraken deden. En ik vind me aanvankelijk niet zo schaftig hier, want ik had hier mensen die Canada reden, maar mijn liefste vriend weer eruit gebleven. En ik schafte dan wie ook op heen. En had er dan vielleicht 6 Monate geschafft. En dan kwam er eenmaal in de avond wel, vielleicht is het een duifje was. Hij kwam naar de deur. En hij wil naar. En hij gebruikte de deur en kwam naar en hij wil geld gaan. Maar toen gelijk, Jacob Hensje, die nam de quilt even aan. Hij had een grote flint. Eerst hadden al, weet je al, eenmaal de schoten. Er werd een woonstoel een beetje aangebied. En hadden daar gewoond geschoten. En dan kwam het er daar aangebroken. En hij vroeg, hoe is de man? En ik wil het geld. Maar Jacob Hensje kwam en nam de flint aan en schoof hem er uit. En maakte daar touw. Wij kwamen helemaal aan en dan schoot hij aan benen aan. En dan vangen we aan te schreeuwen. En dan ran daar weg. En dan weet je, een paar maanden niet door was, te nacht. Niet weer angst om nacht te blijven. En we dan weer op hen waren er steeds naar een politie voor. En dan wilde hij gaan, ik zal daarna blijven. Na ik dacht, de dag word je niet gewoon krijg, weet je, dus daarna waar hij hier zie. En dan vangen de honden wel aan te balen. En dan ging ik moet checken en dan zie ik je die balen en dan gingen er terug gaan. Dan zei hij, hou een paar nachten, dat staat te doen. Dan ben ik gaan slopen. En dan ging ik in baden, maar ik deed niet slopen, ik beet bloos in bed. En bij me weer zo al aan de deur. En bij een karem, die weer dan ook door. Bij een karem en je gewoon heen, die slepen naar de stoel. En hij had mij gezegd, dat hij wilde niet bloos wegrennen, want die mensen wilden komen. Hij wilde een kruiden. Hij wilde lampen steken. En hij wilde een kruiden en den eten geven. En nu wil hij ook voor het eerste weten hoe dan de zwevel. En zei Jacob Hensje, die zijn op de deur. Dan weer naar onder deur en daar op hemzelf, dat is dan de zwevel. Hij zei, maar ik kan niet hier. Hij zei, die zijn op de deur op hemzelf. Ik kan niet hier. En even dem weer, die deed dat te lang en dan haakten ze de deur uit. En kwamen aan. Dat was een tocht, ja. Dan kwamen ze aan. En dan vroegen ze, hoe is de man? Maar wie weer de ene der uitgeraten, je gewoon heen weer de andere der uitgeraten. En ik en zij weer door aan de sloopstoel. Kwamen en fouten aan het lokken aan en vraagden, hoe is de man? En wie zeiden nog niet. En dan schoot hij boven daar aan, er is platter zo aan snapvloer. En dan zei hij, nu gaan we schreeuwen. En dan schreeuwen we, help. Dan kwam een kloos zijremers jongens daar aangerand. En kloos zijremers weer een kloos bij naar Isaac Dikken gegaan. En we gaan weer Isaac Dikken. En kloos zijremers weer dan kwam een tractor aan je voorkomen. Maar even dem, dan hadden die duivel geschoten. En dan gleich, we hadden niet gewild, die Jake am kop schieten. Maar ze hadden hem am kop getroffen. En we Jake doodgeschoten.
Ja, dankzij voor de ervaring meedelen. Dat was een zeer grote tijd, een grote nacht. En ook een schrik voor de ganze community. Dat somebody groot zo is, weer afgereisd er doodgeschoten wird worden. Ja, dat is een pot van wat onze mensen ervaring gemaakt hebben. Some zeer zware en wat wij doen hebben. En ook veel is goed geweest, waardevol geweest en God voor je te danken. Ja. Dus zei je laten je viert hebt. We willen afsluiten, we kunnen goed nog langer. Maar ik wil suggesteren, met je danken, we kunnen ergens aanstellen deze maand en vroeg is, want je persoonlijke vrouw hebt, was dingen en trafen. En je stoot je nog meer, want je maar weten wel van deze mannen met rijke ervaringen, inzicht en ook rood. Gut, waar we den vorzingen, die Zeit ist kurz, Menschen weise. En ik wil dan gelijk met die vers 2 en 3 willen helpen, oké? Please tot. Eerste vers willen zij zingen. Dan zingen we dat lied, die Zeit ist kurz, Menschen weise. Sie schreiben von den Bierhoder und 1832, wahrscheinlich in Russland. Singt. Die Zeit ist kurz, Menschen weise. Und Gott mit dem Augenblick. Nur einmal machst du diese Reise. Lass deine Glut dich Spur zulegen. Nur einmal machst du diese Reise. Lass deine Glut dich Spur zulegen. Du kannst nicht eine Stunde haben. Dein Blut, es trägt das Leben vor. Niemals ein Weg der Kreuz zu halten. Den neuen Weg, den Körperlohn. Niemals ein Weg der Kreuz zu halten. Den neuen Weg, den Körperlohn. Sie lieben für die Zeit verwendet. Mit Essen, Trinken, Scherzen, Ruhm. Der Blut, der Wirken und Gebet. Erfüllt die Zeit mit Gutes tun. Der Blut, der Wirken und Gebet. Erfüllt die Zeit mit Gutes tun. Drum Heiland, lass mich an den Jahren voreinen, die Zeit einzig mein. Von heute am besten zur Wahrheit, für deines Lebens Samenstreuen. Von heute am besten zur Wahrheit, für deines Lebens Samenstreuen. Dankeschön für die Titel, die wir uns essen.
Okay, Dankeschön, Peter. En Dankeschön für diese Fuchs. Wenn einer Satten horcht, dann wundert einer, wie vertalen, wie jüngere, wie horchen, wie wat går hen och vad ni spelar så jag går ju när vi satt i huset och då förtalar vad som från hans vet och som sant och då som från hans nästa. Och vad är det tid så nit en för det för nu var vi nu slussmaka jag nu det next har vi plont alla de plon kommer ta in upp till krog. Jag inte vad det mest har vi nu Vrouw of de plon kan meteen worden opkomen, komt op met je verhuisd op. Leonard, er is helemaal nog niet dat ze zaten in de banken. Welkom op te komen. Klaus Pedig is welkom te komen. Okay, I guess dit zijn de groep wat vielleicht de main planning gedaan hebben van dit. En wanneer we worden zijn, we de hard work gedaan hebben, dan wordt je vielleicht meest al aan opkomen. So I guess wat we nu worden wel gelegenheid geven van dit soort dingen nog wat zeggen wel, daar hebben we de gelegenheid geven hier.
Ik wil gleich wieder einem Dankeschön zu sagen, wer erst hier kommt, das sehr interessant gewesen. Erstens würde ich sagen, Dankeschön für die Community, für die Finanzen, das ganze Fass. Thank you to the community for financing this whole big feast. 2 meals. Yesterday, I understood we served 4,600 people, more or less, and today probably 2,000. So great work has been done. Thank you. And also, I would want to say, on behalf of the Prime Minister, he texted me just now and saying, very, very impressed with the community, and more Belizeans should see what he saw yesterday. So he said, say it to everybody. So that's one. Second, I think we cannot even start naming people because there are so many that really put a lot of effort in this event. And I would want to say David and his wife, they have served as leaders in this committee, and they have really, really put in a lot of labor and hard work and thinking and everything in it. And also Ben and his wife, Levi, the whole parade thing, which was very, very exciting. Leonard with some antiques. And so it's been just a very good experience. So thank you very much. And then I would want to also thank Eddie and Betty from Chihuahua, Mexico. They really put us in, what should we say, a dot on the map, where we came from, how did it happen, where did the Mennonites came from, and before the Mennonites, where were our forefathers, in which group of people were they moving around the world. And for some reason, by the grace of God, he chose each one. And then he mentioned a few things that a specific person made a significant difference. And we know that everybody here, there is not one that God doesn't have a specific purpose why he is alive and why he is here and why he lives in Spanish Lookout or wherever we live. So don't think that we are just a number. We are really created in God's image to praise him. Thank you.
Yeah, I think back now from where this all started, why I'm here in this group. And so anyway, we had, I did agree I would be available, so I was elected to serve here. And it was good, it was fun to learn some more of what happened back 65 years ago. Anyway, we had a meeting, what all we wanted to bring here, so and who would serve, who would take responsibility of it, so I chose to take the responsibility of preparing a parade, which was planned to have. So, that's where I came in to serve. And so I just hired me and 4 other guys to help me, which I wanted to thank them very much for preparing this parade. I was a bit involved. 4 guys that did most of this work, Richard Panner and Conway Panner and Brian Platt and Jim Cornelson did a very good job. Thank you very much. And of course, if all those guys that did drive equipment or machinery, if they would not have done it, would not have helped anything. And so thank you all for taking and to join the parade with the equipment that was asked for, and a lot of people that volunteered. It was a good help. Thank you very much. Our Prime Minister got a good impression of some more VIPs that visited and saw the parade. They were really impressed. So our Prime Minister got a really good impression and a short snapshot of what happened from 65 years to today. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I had the privilege of connecting with the neighbors around Spanish Lookout, and it was a real blessing to get to know more people I had never known before, and get to know people that I had in a different way that I had known already for a while. I would like to thank especially Ismael Rodriguez. He was a great support in connecting with the guys that we needed to contact. So yeah, that was a real blessing. I think culture is different, but I think we should celebrate our differences. But I'm glad that we can live in such a peaceful community with neighbors that want to have a peaceful community as well.
Yes, dat ik had Jan gesteld bij de antiques. Antiques, dat zijn oude zaken. Zo dan neem je via de oude mensen sprak gereden, plotties. Zo, ja, dat is die groot, dat hij een beetje was, wat hij weer. Wie niks gezegd gehad, oder kon mij aanworten aan. Ik vind het ook zo, en ik kan niet ganz met de security en de safety van die zaken aanleiden. Dat ik een denk met mij naartoe kom, dat hoop ik wel niks voor wat is een job met wat beter, met more safety kunnen hebben. Maar ik geloof, is dat die worden zaken kunnen terugstellen, zoals die mainly zoals die komen. Maar ik denk, de ganze passie gisteren vandaag, ik had de hoping dat wat een unity work among the ganze show, the ganze colony and surrounding. Van die gezegd, ik ben zeer reminded van de Verenigde Tijd van de 1615 wat we daar hielden, dat ik las een boek van Holland wat daar passiert hier. De Calvinisten, we hier wat van de Calvinisten in de verschillende groepen. Daar weer de Calvinisten, die weer mondig. Die weer niet weerloos, niet dat die van de government vrij maken dienen aan de government te dienen. Zodat je een tijd dat een vrouw naar Anna, een koningin wordt in Holland. En krijg die tijd weer in Zwitserland, weer door zeer grote vervolging. De Mennonitische vervolging, de christenvervolging. Die raanden alle wiet in de boeien aan. En verkropen zich in de huilen en worden bij gegrepen en aangebracht. Zo wat hij deed, deze Hollandse christen, die hadden door de Hollandse government, die hadden door zo gemaakt dat de christen, wat ik niet katholieken en Calvinisten naamden, die kunnen niet meer als 100 tot 200 personen in een groep samen toeblieven. So er hadden 19 verschillende groepen gegeven. En zij boven waren dat, zijn de groepen aanvangen om verscheidenheid te geven. En daar weer veel verscheidenheid passiert. Veel gezatie gemaakt. We moesten twee rieken nemen, moesten, whatever. Zo verschillende, zeer veel winkelen die weer gewaast. En zo, over die vervolging door in Zwitserland, dat was zeer serieus. En dan weer door 13 maanden uit verschillende groepen. Sommige groepen plus einer wat dem call gekregen had, door wat maar te doen. Zo deze 13 maanden die doen, die kunnen aan een brief schrijven. Aanstonen of zijn niet goed wel een Zwitserlandse government dat aanstonden voor de christen. Dat waren die makkelijke mensen. Zo, zij schrijft een brief, den brief had ik ook gelezen. En schrijft hem aan de Zwitserlandse König. En dat helpt. De christen worden vrijgelaten of uit hem land geschickt. En zeer groot part van de christen randen naar Holland. Wij naar de help weer van doorgekomen. En dat we wonder wat door je doen hadden. Als zij zeiden wat je doen, wat wohin ze weer aangekomen, we werden die eindigheid van die 13 mannen. Weer een eindigheid geworden. Dat had een teruggetrokken doorgaan. Zodat had een zeer grote warning gegeven aan die 19 groepen. En ik hoop dat je bij ons ook nog moet wegen met alle wegvallen wat we hebben, wat vielleicht niet. En God zien hoe zullen zijn. Ja, thank you.
Okay, so I guess that us dann alles von dat event nehmt ihr und alle dem Dank an für hier sein. Sehr Dankeschön. Und wir haben so ihren Welt mit Nubers taub das Fass haben, das Haftgleich. Ich sehr fan geschafft, so sehr Dankeschön dafür für die Einigkeit in so was es dort. So hatten alle gesehen, der Sonntagabend.